Sydney for making the time for it today. For those of you who know much about Amuneal, about 20 years ago, 22 years ago, we decided to shift from being a magnetic shielding company into a company making furniture and custom fabrications. And when we sort of had that plan, we knew we were going to have to participate in trade shows, right? It was a must. And we finally got accepted to our first ICFF in 1999, and we did those trade shows for the next 20 years. But a lot's changed since then. Even in the last 4 or 5 years, change in technology, global pandemics, the way people work, communicate, share, has all changed. So what sort of was a sound marketing plan 20 years ago is not necessarily a sound plan today. So it seemed like a good topic, given the sort of week and the punctuation of the week with all the different trade shows that are going on, to have this conversation. So hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. I do want to just introduce Sydney, and then we're going to hand this over to her. But Sydney Gore came from music and culture, really, and found her way into interiors and into architecture. She described herself as being a little bit of an outsider, but sort of like in the best way possible. Her focus is really much like an anthropologist. She's not so interested in what you say, but sort of why you say it. What's the reasoning behind your ideas, your concepts? What's making you make the choices that you've chosen? So she really has forged a very different, non-traditional path, which I think is also sort of perfect for this conversation. But in terms of like her bylines, so everywhere from New York Times, Vogue, or Architectural Digest, The Cut, W. You may have read her article last week in the Times. It's a bedroom where leather print carpeting and green walls do the talking. And it's exactly the kind of story that I think she likes to tell. It's one about sort of artists bringing their creativity, bringing homes that sort of show their soul. She spent 4 years at AB before launching her Substack, Nobody's Home, and she's secretly plotting to choose product and merchandise as well. So thank you.
I do have some newly released hats, so I almost if I went in chat.
So let Sydney take it away.
Great. Thank you all again for being here. I know it's a really, really busy week, so we appreciate you taking some time out of your afternoon to sit and chat with us. So I'm just going to dive right in. You all came up through fairs and trade shows at a time when visibility was earned physically through booths, introductions, consistent presence. I'm wondering, looking back, what did those early exhibitions actually unlock for you all?
Oh gosh. I'll take the first one here. For me at least, I think definitely it was all vulnerability, right? That's like the key of it all. Like we all have artists and designers, right? Making and manifesting things and putting it out into the world. So I think that there's a really big, and that was like at that time, that was like the big stage for design at the time. So it definitely felt a lot back for me.
Yes, I agree. Can you hear me? I was going to say confidence. What it gave me was confidence, and I think that regular vulnerability, it gives you confidence, and it also gave me a sense of community. You know, I'm working on my own, coming up with all these things, trying to sell, and that's why I love what we're doing with Kamens, is the community that is fostered in the
I mean, we learned that we didn't know anything. Like, we went there and we had like clipboards and order pads, and we're like, oh, we're gonna put this furniture out and we're gonna come back with tons of orders. We came back with 0. And but what we learned was what people were asking us for. So I think like doing the trade shows for me, like there's a vulnerability to it, like John's saying, but there's also like you have to be ready to be humble in this weird way, but also quick to react, right? Like it's true market research, like in real time from your exact customers. You get to hear what they're asking you for, what they're telling you about your stuff, what they're not asking you about your things. But it gave us everything that we sort of needed to really build a business.
For me, it was a white balance. The way I started to design was in a hyper-localized little insulated world, which was great. That had a lot of advantages and really pushed a lot of great ideas forward. But to get out of that, to see a bigger audience was important.
I'm wondering, were there any memorable learning curves for each of you during the early years of exhibiting?
There's like two aspects to all of these things, right? There's the learning curve actually putting on the exhibit. So the design of the exhibit, the actual building of it, right? There's like the business learning curve of it. And then there's the creative learning curve piece, sort of knowing like how far in advance you got your thinking. And learning sort of like, you're only putting on a trade show for 3 days, sometimes 4. And then you're expecting what people saw in the like 7 minutes, if you're lucky, you went for a long conversation, but really in like a minute, just walking by and passing through it, they're gonna hold on that image and they're gonna bring you back and show you their clients expecting on a project. So we had to really learn how to make that stuff stick. You know, that was our, like how did we take the other 362 days of the year and sort of reinforce the message?
I mean, it's a show. Like you have to perform. You have to learn how to perform. You know, as a product designer, it's sort of easy to think, well, if I make a great product, then people will notice it. But that's not really true. They're there to be. So for us, it was learning, how to put on a good show, not just show things.
Well, and I think how to draw people in, because you've got all these boxes, and some devices started with a 10 by 10, and then they graduated to a 10 by 20. There's a staircase in, but how you draw people in, not have too big an entrance so that people just walk by, but create the space within it to allow people to want to come in and stay.
Yeah, I think for us, and Dan's here to shared in this experience, is, and even to what Jason said, definitely, when you design and make things, and obviously this is marketing and presenting, and I'm not really good at marketing at all. So that was a big learning curve those years. I learned how to really present in different ways, so I think it took a lot of time, and I'm still not really that great at it. But I think that, when getting is very intimidating because it's so big, it's so enormous, and it's such a big platform. I mean, my goodness, and of varying sizes of like companies, and it's really humbling, and it seems scary, for sure. And I think for me, I felt like, how do you, back to what you're saying, Rosemary, like, how do you get noticed? Like, what's your point of view? What is the design? What is my perspective? And what am I presenting? And I kind of I went into it, and when we're going to do this, I was like, it has to be like a showstopper. Like, it has, whatever we put in here, I remember telling her, right, and people have to walk down the aisle. There's thousands of people, and they have to be so compelled to stop and be like, that's worth stopping to see. And yeah, that was kind of hard to imagine and manifest.
I mean, I feel like we really just reached this point where a good product alone is not enough, to stand out, especially in a very, very crowded or enormous stadium. And the most memorable presentations tend to, like you were saying, create a point of view, an ambiance. You're really just drawing out the environment, the storytelling, the atmosphere. I'm wondering, why has world building become such an important part of the presentation today?
I think it's so Jason indicated, it's like you've gotta environment that you showcase in becomes, it is sort of like an additive or subtractive process. Right, so I remember, I don't know what year it was, but Jason had a booth, and it was set up sort of like the most gallery-esque of displays. I see, so every one of these pieces had its own background. You could see it clearly, and it was sort of isolated from the noise of the rest of the show. Right, so you could filter out whatever else was around you. And I think, you know, his approach sort of resonated. Like, we would always build the booth itself. This thing we knew was temporary, but we built it like it was permanent. And that environment became more important than any of the individual products that we showed. And that's what people sort of remember us for. It's like the environment or how you felt inside the environment.
But for you, that brand was at that time, were you thinking a lot about, like, of course, like presenting architecture, right? That's part of the brand now.
Yeah, I mean, we would always tell people we were fearless, right? Like, we don't do anything. But you can say it, but unless you can prove it. So when people would always, we used to joke that it was half the people that came in the booth would want to play like stump the fabricator, right? They wanted to prove that you can't do the things that you're saying you can do. So like, we need to build this monument to what we're willing to do and able to do. And that's what the booths became.
And for those who haven't seen their booths back in the day, like monumental, we would walk up like, oh my God, like that was, they built that. Like, it was like unbelievable, you know. So yeah, very impressive for sure. Like feet was a feat when we walked down, like how many thousands of pounds of steel, like, you know, you're witnessing. It was very
Well,
cool.
and I think that's what was really useful about Gore, because I also remember you would walk in, you created that experience, so when you tell people I can do anything, they believe it, you know. So I think that's what it's my booths were a lot more amateur. But yeah, it was a beautiful experience.
I think marketing has always been about a little bit. The thing that's changed is that we now, as manufacturers, are a lot closer to customers. There's not a middle man anymore. So it's not that this is a terribly new idea that's new marketing. It's that we, as manufacturers, know how to do this. I think that's been the biggest change over the last 20 years.
I mean, I think it's no secret that design fairs and trade shows are very expensive, competitive, and can be just overwhelming, especially for emerging designers and design studios. So I'm wondering, from your point of view, what actually makes participating worth it? And then how do you determine when it's not? I know before we all arrived here today, we discussed that you guys don't really do the trade shows anymore. So just wondering from your perspectives, what is the point?
I think if I was to do a trade show again, I would want to be showing some really unique products, because that's what I miss from the trade shows in general, ICFF, Milan, wherever it is. You have so many of the big brands, and so I think that's what we will miss is that I'm just starting out, showing myself, and being vulnerable, and a sense of discovery that came from being at those shows and going to those shows, and I think that's missing. So if I was to do something like that, I would want it to be not overtime in line, but here is a kind of real one-off pieces that you know, stretching your imagination, my imagination, production, and you know, you can have 2 or 3 pieces and then that's it. Like to have a really overstated piece, something that really felt creative and spoke to those early things.
I was saying, it's hard because the shows traditionally are really expensive. And we did the math, and sort of being here for a year was about what it cost to do the show for 3 days, 3 or 4 days. So the economics of it make it hard to just take a risk. You know, I think that there's like the off-site shows, the activations, that's exciting. You know, the idea idea of like really if you want to experiment with something, you want to do a couple of exclusive pieces, you want to show a couple pieces to an audience that you don't know, you know, renting a hotel suite, you know, doing a collab, things like that, that seems exciting. And the idea of like going back into, you know, the union run thing, waiting for your friends to arrive, and all that stuff seems so unromantic that it's hard to imagine.
I think for me, yeah, maybe that's me. I think for me, I hadn't always, the intention was to do the shows to hopefully maybe people like what we were doing and well, like, yeah, like, and maybe like I could keep kind of doing it. But ultimately I felt like it was always just impermanent, right? Like it's just a temporary thing. And I think I always kind of dreamed of when I was young, you know, like, wouldn't it be cool if you had your own home for your products? And so privileged today because I think we all have that. And so that was always like in my mind when I was young. I felt like, oh man, how cool it'd be to have your own showroom to show all of your stuff in that home in that environment.
I mean, I just saw something you had these new pieces, sort of on the wall.
Oh yeah, it's our showroom.
Is that the showroom?
Yeah.
Because that felt like, all right, here's why I can do this.
Sorry, we were just talking about that on the subway side.
So what, like, how did that come to be?
Well, so you're talking about the installation stuff at our showroom right now. We were honestly just trying to merchandise our products in a different way. And in that particular case, the message was really simple. Try to get people to understand that we make mirrors now. You know, we work with a lighting company. So we branched out 5 years ago, but people don't really intuitively understand that. So it was just an attempt through merchandising to do that message across.
But it felt like an installation. It felt like if you wanted to do just an art installation, get an idea, it felt very much like that, cohesive.
Yeah, I mean, so we haven't done trade shows since 2019. If you had asked me 2 years ago, would we do one again, I'd probably say no. I've come back off that a little bit now, but see. But we've always treated any exhibition we do in the showroom with that same idea. Like, it's not just a catalog of products. We don't have one of everything in the showroom. What we're trying to do is to show, you know, not to come back to that word again, but like to show the world and to show it in a creative way and to, you know, hopefully inspire people. So that's the idea that we're attempting at least.
And I guess that's the freedom you have, right? You're already painting it, you already have the space. Like you can dedicate an area, you dedicate a space, you can take a risk and get that feedback. You don't have to wait a year to do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the perfect segue into my next question, which was just about how brands, you know, have to think beyond the traditional showroom model these days. And so I was wondering how each of you are using physical spaces, whether it's your showrooms, studios, stores, to foster connections and also activate your audience in more meaningful, intentional ways.
Well, I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's very easy to just sit in bed and flip through Instagram and see 90% of what's going on in the art world. I mean, it's, you know, it's a thing. So, you know, but that said, we do make physical things that people interact with. People want to sit in chairs. They want to see what the light on a light feels like. There is a physical component to it. So, you know, how do you get people to come experience that in person? You know, that's the trick. Like, that's the trick of building a showroom, you know, now. I wish I had a quick answer for it. Like, every single time we reset it, it's an attempt to try to get people to come interact.
I know the showroom, our showroom, we really only have our flagship in New York and in Connecticut, but it's, you know, we try to experience the product, feel the story. And then obviously you've got the other marketing tools, you've got the videos and brand and the website, and all of those are important tools. And then getting the product out, going out to designers and showing it is also, I'm doing quite a lot of exposures now with a number of vendors going and showing their product, which can be quite successful or not. But, you know, that there are definitely vehicles that can play. But I think the showroom still has a really valuable place to tell the brand story, the first and foremost place, right?
I completely agree, and I feel like, but even beyond that, for me, when we were thinking about putting up a showroom, I really felt like, you know, I thought about like being part of this community that we're in, and A&D community for all these years, and I just felt like, man, it's a small community. And I kept coming back to that, and then kind of then thinking about this place and this building, and of course being in gym, and you know, like how warm and wonderful, and like I really felt the community, and it's good. Like I think it's important. I think everybody talks about it like, oh yeah, everybody's talking about buzzword community, but I think we're talking about it because I think we're all missing it. I think we're missing a bit of that human connection piece. So at least for me, it's definitely important to like your neighbors and your friends and your community, having us be here today and be connected. I think is a big part of the thing.
We're still figuring it out, honestly. When you're at a trade show, everybody that's walking down the aisles you think is your potential customer, right? When we moved in here, we were meeting people we didn't know existed, right? So they hadn't heard of us. So we're excited. We built this space and we got these great products, and we've been around for all these years. They couldn't pronounce the name. They didn't know what we're doing. They'd walk through and they only see the one thing that they're looking for in that moment in time. You know, we have customers who work that have been here 2, 3, 4 times and didn't know we did kitchens, right? Like they didn't know we did bars. They saw something for this other piece. So we're trying to learn how to make it a resource, I guess, especially for a lot of clients who work from home. Their offices are dispersed around, so they can meet here. They can like pick up physical samples where it's hard to get the same sample in 4 different home offices. You know, so I think for us, it's the sense of engagement. Because like you said, like everyone's seen what stuff looks like before they get here. There's not a ton of surprises there. As soon as we get something done, we're showing it. Like it's up and digitally, you know, sort of digested. But you don't know what it feels like to lift something, to touch it, to sort of open doors or whatever that, you know, you don't know what the warmth of that light feels like, whatever that is. And that goes back to that like creation of the world, that environment that we can control. But also, like, is there a piece of it that makes it easier for our clients? Like, take some of the risk off the table for them, so they can show their clients. Like, a lot of times that's who's bringing people in with the design projects, bringing their clients here to see and touch. I'm sure it's the same with you guys. And it's like that, it's, you know, sort of making it a tangible part of the process, so you do have sort of pride and motivation. Yeah.
I'm curious just because I feel like also now, especially in 2026, there's a lot of conversation around like lack of third spaces, right? And with the spaces that you have, I'm wondering, do you ever feel pressure like, okay, we need to have like a bar or a cafe be a part of this experience as well? I'm just wondering if like you're thinking about other ways to kind of not just get people through the door, but also to kind of stay and linger a little bit longer. And it's totally fine for absolutely not. But just wondering.
We have an espresso machine.
Yeah, and to that point, you know, when we designed and laid out the studio, I was like, our showroom downstairs, we were we have to be able to host parties, and having a bar kind of like in the middle of the showroom to be able to kind of gather and come together for sure. It was like definitely part of the design process too. So we can kind of, have great
The piece we haven't figured out yet, I don't know if it's an issue for you guys, like, I want to bring the workshop here, right? Like, let people like touch and continue with something, get that finished, and have it be really interactive. Because when people come, I'm sure it's the same for you guys, like, when they come to your shop, it changes everything, it changes the way they think about the possibilities. And everything here seems so stable, right? Like, it's done and you know, maybe you understand what you can change, but if you understand the process, then you understand that what's possible.
Definitely been thinking about it for years. Like, how do we bring fire into this building? Our gym, here. Man, I so want to listen a lot here. But yeah, I think like, we're so fortunate to be able to have people come visit and tour the workshop and to like have a different appreciation. And we're fortunate to have, we all are probably to have some designers come and visit the studios and like the magic of all of it, of all the making. It's like it puts all this, it recontextualizes what all this stuff means. So I don't know, we'll figure out, maybe we'll scheme and talk to the department.
But it's always like, we have all these finished samples around and stuff, like, what if you could just like pick out your piece and go apply your finish? And like get into what you want.
Maybe we can persuade Jim to.
It's a lot of concrete, probably fun.
It's easier for you, right? It feels like it's easier for you being in Soho, things that, only being in a building environment like this is great as this particular building.
Easier
To imagine a bit more of a espresso shop or, showing some of the product.
Yeah, sure, I can imagine it. But I think, if there is a little bit of pressure to do that. I think there is a sort of knee-jerk reaction that, you've got to sort of espresso and that for people in. But, it's just like anything else. If you're going to do it, you've got to really do it. Like, you can't just put a coffee maker on the bar. Like, you got to really go in 2 feet, all, no looking, all in. And I'd be open to that idea. We're not there yet, but we have to figure out what that looks like. It can't just be a half-assed attempt.
No espresso, we need like
Exactly. Plenty of places to get coffee, so already.
I mean, I see a lot of people doing pop-up activations now, which I think is really fun. I will say maybe this is controversial, but what gets me to stay a little bit longer is usually a really, really nice bathroom. Good selfie moment, and also, if it's done right, I don't know, I appreciate your bathroom.
All the restaurants, that's the key, right?
Yeah, but private, but it's like if I can just kind of walk out there, and then maybe like the 5th time I will buy something. But just appreciating the vibes. I'm wondering.
I just say one thing, is I think you're kind of about like the coffee machine. Like one of the things that, and I don't think there's a lot of stuff that I always find fault in that we do, but one thing I think we do well is extend true hospitality. So I think Veronica was here somewhere, and she really sort of said, unfortunately, but like, we have people who will just like camp out, time between meetings, or go camp out, come and take a meeting at your showroom.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm talking about customer entertainment. I mean,
Oh, okay.
supplying hospitality is one thing. I was talking about like retail customers. People off the street who's going to come, eat dinner at the furniture store.
Right.
That's a different piece.
But I do think that that's one of the reasons people feel comfortable in an environment where they, it can be intimidating, for lots of reasons. So that idea of the hospitality starting at the door is important.
Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering, and we've already talked about community building, what's supporting the business. Kind of circling back to design fairs. I wanted to know, just based on kind of what's changed over the last decade, for you, like, what are some of the positive changes, what are some negatives, not to like brag too hard on it, but just wondering.
With fair specifically?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we touched on a lot of it. There's no one from ICFF here, right? So the simple fact is that trade shows are less important than music. Which does not mean that they don't have a role to play, but it, with the birth of the internet, they just don't have the same importance. It used to be the one time a year, 1 week out of the year, where you could go see what everyone else was doing, what else existed in the world.
Yeah.
You just don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to travel. You can just do it on your phone. So there has to be another reason to participate, to do that. And that's what we're wrestling with. I don't quite know what that reason is yet, which is why we haven't done it since 2019. But again, I'm not saying it's over. We're just trying to figure it out.
Well, I have a contrasting opinion. For me, with the fabrics and rugs and so on, something like Decalogue, I don't know how many of you go with Decalogue, but it used to be Maison Logier. I think for me, the big trend is that all the big, Jacob Jarrett Center, the big buildings where all the design work used to be showcased has all moved into the city, and it's in the little shops. You have a chair in every little window for that. Saloni, everything has moved into the city. But for me, something like Decalogue, which is more fabric focused, but it's actually become a mandate for me. I now feel like I have to show there, and that is really the only trade show that I do. But so it has, because so many designers flock there, and it's immensely useful for me because I have people from all over the US, all over the world. I have people from Australia visiting, so it has created a broader reach. But you have to pour a ton of money into it.
And I think that what you're describing is slightly different than what Jason's describing, because you're doing a trade show, but it's not really a trade show, right? It's a design gathering. You're renting a space, doing a pop-up, you get to control everything that you're in the space.
But I think that's what, in many ways, what the trade shows have become.
Yeah, I think that's like the vernacular to these activations is sort of the struggle, right? Because it feels, before when the activations started, they were smaller, right? It was supposed to like fledgling companies who couldn't do the big shows yet. Now it's sort of reversing, where it's sort of, it is the opportunity to be the most interesting. And I think it's, to the point that was made earlier, the risk of all this is just saturation, right? Sydney was telling us when we had our last call, I think 6 events she was going to that night. So it's like, it's so much, you're just inundated. So we know we're inundated with all the graphics all the time, right? We see it, we get to control what we want to digest. But then you're also inundated with like the social piece of that as well. And like your batteries aren't infinite. So I think it's sort of figuring out like, this is New York, right? So we're in New York, we're about like design week in New York, but New York is design all the time. So really I think there's an interesting opportunity for these different collaborations to happen. It just can be any time of year. Like I'm just looking around, like that wall came because a friend was like, I keep selling these carpets. I want to show people what to put on the wall. Can we do a wall in the place? John's like, I'm going to open up space downstairs. All right, let's put stuff up here, and we'll direct it. We'll show them what's there. And it's like, it's not for commerce in the old way of like, we're not trying to sell any of it, but we're just like giving space that we're not occupying, sort of another dimension. Maybe that's like the third room sort of design space or the display space. So, but did you go to other things you've been here, like other activations, other? Yeah, a lot. Okay. So I think that the question is like, what's the appetite people have? You know, it's a, Rosemary said before, like it's big. What's new with next is important in this building, right? I don't know, Jason, do you see anything from that? Like, can you plot when what's new with next is happening, or what you see across town in the showroom?
Sorry,
Can you, like, when what's new, what's next is going on in this building? It used to be like a week-long thing, now it's a one-day thing. Do you see any of that in your space? Like, are people showing up?
no,
Right.
yeah,
It's so local, and it's so isolated.
yeah.
So I think I worry that when ICFF moves to November and we realize that I think it stays in that locale. Like, it all stays west.
I mean, I think if the whole design week continues to be built around it, then I think it will bring people. I mean, I 100% agree, design work is in New York all the time, but I do find at these events, you do get a lot of people who make the trip. You know, there's an extra reason they can get all this saturation of different events, or bang, it's a saturation, but it's also a, you know, back you up kind of thing. Come here and get it.
There's no indication that anyone see my design will come out. I guess we'll see. Right. They haven't.
Right,
That's
so
a different organization.
if they're entirely different, then it's
Yeah.
probably, you know, pretty bad idea.
I mean, this is the issue with design fairs in the U.S. in general, is that there's like a million of them. You know, like there are, I don't know, 6 or 7 in New York alone. There's no critical mass, which again, it's fine. I understand. I'm not saying that there should be, but in Italy, there's one fair. There's one fair for the entire country for the whole year, and that's why it has the energy that it has. And you know, we're just a different animal over here.
I completely agree, and I think when you say that, I agree with you, and then also I start to think back to community piece. Because like that's it, you know. And Salonia is very powerful in that regard because they all come together and they made it a thing to go to that whole city and that whole town. And I think I agree. I think if that would be the way to do it in New York, to all come together and to like really collaborate and bring your whole community together.
Really great. Is this a good time to open it to the floor if anyone has questions that we can dive into that?
Oh,
I'll bring you the
Or you can project.
I have so many questions. I'm very happy to have you all. Thank you for giving us your time. I'm sitting here imagining all of you, you're artists, you graduate from college, you get a apartment in Brooklyn, you have 3 roommates, you're just making no money, and you start to draw a light fixture, you blow some glass, you find a fabricator, you do a prototype, you do, I mean, yeah. And the idea that you all have built these huge businesses from that, it's hard for me to imagine the next steps. So I'm just curious to know when and if you all took on business managers and in order to grow your businesses. Last week. It's hard to see it going from that to booths and the manufacturing, and even to just do a booth from your apartment or from your prototype.
yeah.
I mean, it's just a lot of information.
And I think you so like, do you see yourself, like, when you think about the manufacturing side, right, you've got this whole other business side that you're bringing to, right? Do you find them to be in conflict with one another, or is it the same problem solving
mean, well, I wrestled with that, but I mean, I brought on, I beat by a few months, just at the end of last year, we brought on the president. So, I've enjoyed growing the business, the business part of it. I enjoy being a designer more, so kind of getting back to that now. But, you know, I think to answer your question a little bit though, like to do anything, to grow anything, like you have to go into it with a huge amount of, you know, ignorance, frankly, and arrogance. Like it's the snowball rolling down the hill. Like you don't have a plan 20 years down the road. You just think like, well, I have a good idea. I'm trying to put a good idea out in the world, and then a couple people like it, and you've got to like come up with another idea, and it just keeps going. And you decide whether you can manage that, and you do it, or you don't. And you know, there's very rarely a time when you step back and say, okay, I need a plan. Like you're figuring it out in real time. At least that's the way I do it. Maybe other people are smarter.
Well, I don't know, maybe bringing it, I think we all have that quality, right? I think we all have sort of creative and business side of it, but sort of constant struggle. But I also think maybe that's why we were all ICFF, because I think it was a combination, you know, back in the day of a real, the duality of that. Like, I just want to make pretty things and I want people to like them, but then there's the other side, well, okay, so you've got to get out of your office or workspace and you've got to go into the world and show them. And so that's the business side put us all out into the trade show.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, John and I talk a lot, and when we talk about what we do when we go to work, it's always the business side of things. It's always the fixing of things. It's always the things you want to see better and improved. And I think it's like, there's no sense of like running out of creative ideas for product. Like that's not the concern. The concern is either like outpacing, outscaling your processes and your systems, outscaling, outpacing your team, outscaling, outpacing like your work ethic. Like there's a whole bunch of things that play. You know, and I think that I feel like I'm fortunate that like whatever the problem is, whether it's a creative problem, you know, designing something, finding the white space, or a business problem, it's the same neurons that are firing. So, you know, I like the nerdy business side of things too. It's not glamorous, right? You know, but it's sort of like that
But
interesting.
you're able to do it.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question?
So we all love beautiful pictures, but trade shows give us the chance to see, feel, and touch. I think most of you guys in your showrooms should have great video footage of your product being made and how the work of the art and how it's made. I think that's what attracts certainly me to, you know, looking at the product and seeing how it's fabricated and appreciate the work and effort that goes into giving it the finish that it has. And the picture is beautiful, but video shows a lot more. And that's, you know, I think we all should show more of what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi, I'm a designer. I'm ICFF baby, if you will. I was showing at ICFF for 3 years in the course this year. And aside ICFF, I've done multiple fairs. So as an emerging designer today, it's challenging to go from
can't imagine what it's like to be you today. Like really challenging. Like I barely figured out how to do it in the physical world. That now we live in two worlds, physical and digital, right? And now we're able to operate in that world. But I don't know how do you fight for the attention and the point of view amongst all the noise that we're all inundated with. And I don't know. I think about you guys and some of the younger teams, and I'm like, man, like I feel for you guys. But I think you guys are way more in tune because I'm just the older guy and not as in tune with the digital one maybe. So, but I think for me at least, I love problem solving and I love adaptability, and I think and determination are those are the three only things that I feel like is the only reason I was able to maybe almost kind of make it. True.
Definitely not humility.
I mean, I don't know your work, but you don't need a show. You know, you need to build the world. You know, what's your little world? And you can do that for free. You need no investment, no anything for it. You can do it with your phone. And, you know, start building that world again, keep people involved and get interested in it. And it will start to manifest.
Sydney asked a question we talked last week, and she said, what advice would you give to an emergence brand? And it's funny, like, I think you are also in multi-line showrooms too, right? So John, so there's like an in-between also, right? So there's your own branded showroom, but then you have your work picked up in multi-line showrooms. And to Jason's point, you can also have your own digital showroom and create that world. So it's like highly product dependent, I think, in terms of what people need to see, what the cost of samples are, and that sort of thing. But there are these like intermediate steps. And I think you've got the wherewithal to sort of like step back and figure out how do you take incremental steps in a couple different areas at the same time. Like if I can get into one or two multi-line showrooms, in different cities across the country, that would be a big win. If I get like a digital platform, Instagram website that I'm proud of, that I can really showcase my work well, that's a win. The gentleman's point before, if you have like process stuff that's really important what you're doing, and if I can demonstrate the process, you get closer to like me and make it personal and make it not about some big corporate polished stuff, but like artisan based. That's also a win. And I think that's the opportunity we have today. And I think, like when you go through a building like this, there's showrooms like this, and there's multi-line showrooms, and they exist all over the country. So I think if you are okay taking lots of different approaches and realize that like it's going to be an evolution, and maybe in 5 years, what success looks like is different. I can not measure. But right now, it's like getting like eyes on the product, getting lots of questions and feedback, so you have to iterate, make the process more seamless for the client. So that I think it is starting.
Great question.
Any other questions?
You can also talk to them after.
I have one little comment I'll just share with you. We were at NYC by Design event last night, and we were just walking home, or walking to a restaurant right from
You're carrying the trophy?
No. But we were walking to dinner, and lo and behold, there was the Jazz Center. And I was just like, unbelievable, right? Like, not even planned, like, of course. I was like, what is the room telling me? But I just wanted to say, like, wow, like, how cool, just to, like, what I did, I just kind of took it in, and all those feelings of the stress of the show, right? And, oh, man, and scared and excited.
The butterflies too.
Was that?
The butterflies too.
Butterflies, yeah, excitement, like, passion and all that. All that came back to me, and I just was kind of really grateful because I was thinking about you guys there, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be there tomorrow. Like, be there with those guys, and we kind of doing all right. And that's a privilege, right?
just completed a full renovation, so if you saw it before last week, then you really haven't seen it. So it's worth going down and checking out the product. John has an event right after this, so down on the 12th floor. It's a collaboration with the AAEI, DA.
Yep.
But great organization, great showroom, sure it'll be a great time. And then we have some refreshments, cocktails, food for you guys here. Welcome to. So come around, have conversations, kick the tires.
I just want to say, I'm not an artist, I'm just a fan of Amuneal, but I find this so generous and so great to hear your stories, putting myself in a younger person's shoes to say like, wow, you know, it's